The theme for the month of February is the story of us. You know, February is the month of love, month of relationship. So this month we're looking at marriages and relationships at Miami Temple. We all have a story. When you get married, you bring your story into another person's life. So marriage is really about two stories becoming one. Can you say complicated? It is complicated to bring two stories into one. For those of you who heard my sermon the first Sabbath last month, we talked about imprinting and how generational imprint affect you for the rest of your life, in your relationships, in your marriage. The theme this month is the story of us. Two people becoming one. The story of us is about two people bringing each story together. It is complicated. If you remember last month, we spent the whole time talking about Joseph and how the imprint of his father Jacob affected him. And we concluded that he was still a gift of grace. And Jacob, in the long run, became a gift of grace, even though his life was complicated. So today I want to talk about Jacob. I want to talk about Jacob, the married man. I want to talk about Jacob, the family man. I want to talk about Jacob, the leader of a clan. I want to talk about Jacob, the broken one that God chose, the leader of his people. The life of Jacob is a perfect example how God can take a broken person and use them anyway. So I gave my sermon today a different kind of title, the Jacob syndrome. So there is such a thing as a Jacob syndrome. Let me read it to you. The Jacob syndrome is also called the XYY syndrome. You see, it's a genetic condition where the male has an extra Y chromosome. If you remember your biology, to be male you have XY, remember? That's what makes a male, XY. Well, if someone has the Jacob syndrome, what happened is you have an extra Y chromosome. Instead of having 46, you have 47. So instead of XY, you are XYY. This person who has this syndrome may be taller than usual, may have more acne than usual, increased risk of learning problems, and usually this person is more liable to get angry and out of control quite fast. And they are more susceptible to mental health issues. However, for the context of my sermon today, I want to give it a new twist. I want to talk about the emotional XYY. My Jacob syndrome is the emotional syndrome that I want to talk about. Here's my description of that syndrome. According to Wilny, the dysfunctionality of men as they enter marriage unprepared by their father or the men in their lives or the lack of men in their lives. Let me make it plain. The Bible verse you read this morning, we will go over again. The Bible seemed to indicate, God seemed to indicate that men, the male species, has a special job to do in the family. When a man marries a woman, that man has a specific responsibility in that marriage, in the family. What I'm suggesting today is this: because of sin, we have an extra Y chromosome emotionally, which causes us men not to be who we ought to be in marriage. Let me compare the two for you real quickly. So here's the syndrome. The XY, characteristics taller than average male, otherwise no physical symptoms, they look normal, have tendency to be more active than normal, usually have some mental retardation. Some suggestion that XYY males have higher than normal levels of aggression. So let's compare that emotionally according to my theory. My theory for the emotional part, typical male, we are big. My mic is dying and it's waking up. Okay. So the male emotionally is larger than life in his own head. Okay? Emotionally, a man who gets married looks normal, but we are not. The women are going, have tendency to be more active than normal. We talk a lot, and sometimes we don't say much. In other words, the activities with the mouth, blah, 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 blah. And the kids and the wife are rolling their eyes. What is he talking about now? More active than normal. Usually have some mental retardation. Okay, I'll behave on that one. Moving on. Some suggestion that the XYY males have higher than normal levels of aggression. Sometimes, as men, when we don't get our ways, we try to throw a temper tantrum of a 5-year-old. As you can tell, guys, the sermon today is mostly for you. I'm sorry. We're going to spend the whole month on relationship. Women, you'll get your turn, trust me. And singles, you'll get your turn too. But today I want to talk about marriage and the role God intended for the male to play in marriage. Here's the verse I'm talking about. The Bible says, submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ has loved the church and gave himself for it. This is part one of the message from God. This is for the women. Here's the message from God to the men. Okay? A man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Let each one of you in particular so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. Let me give you the Message version. Out of respect for Christ, be courteously reverent to one another. Did you catch that? I love it. Reverent to one another. Wives, understand and support your husbands in ways that show your support for Christ. The husband provides leadership to his wife the way Christ does for his church. Not by domineering, but by cherishing. So just as the church submits to Christ as he exercises such leadership, wives should likewise submit to their husbands. Husbands, go all out in your love for your wives, exactly as Christ did for the church. A love marked by giving, not getting. Part two. And this is why a man leaves his father and mother and cherishes his wife. No longer two, but one flesh. In the Message, put this one in parenthesis. This is a huge mystery, and I don't pretend to understand it all. What is clearest to me is the way Christ treats the church. End of parenthesis. And this provides a good picture of how each husband is to treat his wife, loving himself in loving her, and how each wife is to honor her husband. So, let's break it down. There are really 4 principles that we find in the verses I just read. Principle number 1, men ought to love their wives like Christ loved the church. That's sacrifice. Principle number 2, wives must support and respect their husbands. That's respect. We're going to come back to that. Principle number 3, no abuses, physical, emotional, spiritual, or psychological. We're going to come back to that too. And last principle in those verses, men, you must love yourself. And we're going to come back to that. So what are we saying? What I just showed you is the biblical mandate for families, how families are to function. The male is supposed to be the spiritual leader of the home. Everything you read about the wife submitting to the man is subject to the man being the spiritual leader of the home. Are you following me? It is the spiritual leadership that gives the men the authority to lead the home. So if you're not a spiritual leader, well, the man is supposed to be the spiritual leader in the home. In that capacity, this stuff that I'm talking about is supposed to be passed from father to son. In the Old Testament, after creation, God instructed Adam how to be a man. And Adam was supposed to instruct his sons how to be men. Sin put a stop to that. And we've been dealing with that extra Y chromosome ever since. You get it? Hence the Jacob syndrome. So let me break it down for you. So, basic biblical mandate for marriage. The man has a role. The mother has a role. First role of the man, he must bless his home and he must love his home. When a man has a good relationship with God, the automatic result is that he blesses his home as opposed to cursing his home. Very important point. When a man has a relationship with God, because of that relationship, he automatically blesses his home. If he doesn't, the opposite is also true. The woman shows respect to her man and love her home. Ladies, the way a man receives love from a woman is through respect. You can tell him you love him all day and all night. Until you show him some respect, he doesn't feel the love. That's how us men, we receive love, through respect. And that's another sermon for another time. Another rule. A man is supposed to teach his son how to be a man. Adam was supposed to teach his sons, Abel, Cain, Seth, and the many other sons he had, how to be a man. That's the only way a young boy will learn to be a man, from his dad. A woman teaches her daughter how to be a woman. It makes sense. Mother, your daughter will follow your example soon or later. My sister, whom I love much, some of you know her, says to me, Wilny, sometimes I do stuff and I see Georgette doing it. I see my mom and it's scary. Most women go through that. Whether you love or you like your mom, you copy their behavior. That's your example. Let's keep going. A man is supposed to teach his son how to love a woman. How does he do that? By loving the mother, the son learns, oh, this is how I'm supposed to love a woman. Can you imagine if dad doesn't love the mother? What is the son learning? A woman is supposed to teach her daughter how to love a man. I mean, you're making pictures in your mind when this goes wrong because of the Y, extra Y chromosome. A man teach his daughter what kind of man to marry. Now marinate on that for a moment. Typical girl wants to marry someone just like her dad, whether it is for good or for evil. The greatest compliment my daughter gave me, I don't know if it was a compliment or not, when she finally met this guy she wanted to marry. I had not met him yet. I said, "Sweetie, tell me about him." "Dad, he's just like you." Obviously, I cringed. That's what happens. Whether our daughters love us, whether we have a good relationship or not, guys, they're going to marry you or someone like you. Because you as a father, you're teaching that girl which guy she's going to marry based on how you treat the mother. And mothers, you teach your son how to receive the love of a woman. Some men are really messed up because they don't know how to receive love. You can love them to death, it's never enough because they have mama issues. That's the principle. Let me run quickly through Jacob to show you the Jacob syndrome. You already know this story, so I'm going to go through quickly. This is the imprint of Jacob. Abraham deceived Abimelech. Remember that? He lied to him, told him his wife was sister. Abimelech took her. His home got cursed. Remember what I told you earlier? A man who's connected with God blesses. A man who's not connected curses. Well, for some reason, Abraham was not connected. He lied, gave up his wife, brought curse on his home first, but on the house of Abimelech, to the point Abimelech got so scared, kicked Sarah out. But guess what happened 20 years later? Can you guess? Isaac did the same thing to the same king. Read the Bible. 20 years later, Isaac told the same lie to Abimelech again. "She's not my wife, she's my sister." With that process began a whole race of deceivers in the Old Testament. That imprint. They lied, they cheated, they deceived. So Jacob was born with an imprint to cheat, to lie. At a young age, he stole his brother's birthright. Who does that? And he tricked him. Esau regretted it later, but by then was too late. Here's what's worse. Rebecca, his mother, jumped in the game. She set him up. She knew what had happened. Instead of helping her son out, she says, "I'll help you. I'll cook the meal that your father likes. I'll take the skin of the animal so you feel like, your brother. Wear his clothes so you smell like him." So Jacob deceived his father, deceived his brother, and his mother helped him run away. And if you read the Genesis, you'll find out Rebecca lied to her husband Isaac, telling her husband, "Well, Jacob can't stay here. He's got to go away. I don't want him to marry one of these women here. He needs to go to my ancestry to find a woman." It was a lie. She was trying to save his life because Esau was out for blood. You see, the whole family, the male influence, that Y chromosome, the Jacob syndrome, covered the whole family. Daddy was lying, mommy was lying, son was lying. So he goes to a place called Padam Aram, to his uncle Laban. Have you ever read about Laban? Laban cheated Abraham every way he could. From the wife, to the animals, to the wealth, and he tricked him left and right. It got so bad that Jacob waited till Laban was 3 days away, shearing the sheep. And while his father-in-law was gone, he pulled all his riches together, got all his wives together, and left. When Laban comes back 3 days later, he discovered that his son-in-law and his daughters are gone. He goes after them. 3-4 days later, he catches up with them. What have you done to me? And Jacob said, man, I had to get away from you. You're a cheat. It gets worse. The Y chromosome is still working. Because Jacob, have you ever wondered why Rachel died in childbirth? Jacob cursed her. Because when Laban caught up with Jacob and the family, and Laban discovered his gods, idols were missing, he went to Jacob and said, who took my idol? He says, we didn't. And the Bible said, Jacob said, may the person who took them be cursed and die. What happened a few years later? His favorite wife died in childbirth. The Jacob syndrome, the lies, the deceit overtook that family. And I can go on and on. Jacob had no backbone. Remember what the boys did when they raped Dinah? Remember how they deceived the whole land of Shechem? They went and told the guys, you can marry my sister, but you know, for that to happen, all of you have to be circumcised. So the king's son wanted Dinah so badly. He got circumcised. His father and all the men in Shechem got circumcised. Just when those guys were weak after the circumcision, Jacob's boys came into town, killed every man, took all the women as slaves, and took their properties. That's why Jacob was so rich, partly. Are you following me? Deceit, deceit, deceit. That's Jacob. That's the man of God. Jacob's household obviously was not on us. It was divided. I can go on. Can you imagine what happened between Leah and Rachel in that home? If you don't believe me, read Genesis 31, 29, 30, 31, 32. Every child that Leah had, she gave the child a name based on her anger toward Jacob and Rachel. Read it, it's there. This one is named because so-and-so. This one is named because so-and-so. And when finally Rachel had her child, she said, call him Joseph because the Lord has delivered me. You can feel the anger, the angst in that home because of that extra Y chromosome, that Jacob syndrome. Remind you what we saw earlier quickly. Those three principles is what that house was missing. You see, men ought to love their wives like Christ loved the church. That is not the kind of love Jacob had. Can you imagine being Leah? Knowing every day your sister is better seen than you? Can you imagine? Rachel, knowing that your older sister had kids before you and you're the preferred wife? Wives must support and respect their husband. You think these two women respected Jacob? He had no backbone. They did not. No abuse. There were no physical abuse, but there was emotional abuse in that home, spiritual abuse in that home, psychological abuse in that home. Can you imagine living in a home where all your boys are murderers and the father does nothing? Nothing. Men, you must love yourself. Oh, let's talk about that, for example. Gentlemen, You cannot love your wife really unless you learn to love yourself. Self-love begins with accepting who you are just the way you are and willing to do something about what you don't like about you. That's self-love. Don't like it, do something about it. Stop whining. Stop complaining. Do something. Just in case you didn't know, let me share with you what love is. What is love? It is an overwhelming emotion you have about another person. An emotion that you can't truly explain, but you can't get rid of. Notice I underline the word emotion, a feeling. Do you realize that emotions come and go? There comes a time when this needs to become a principle. So whether you feel good or you feel bad, you still love. But most people spend their time loving with an emotion. So when you don't feel the emotion, you're angry and that extra Y chromosome acts out. And then you are right in the middle of the Jacob syndrome. Love needs to be constant. It needs to be continual. I have 10 more minutes. Let me make use of it. Let me give you some practical advices on how to have a better marriage. Here we go. How to love a woman. This is for you guys. I'm not pretending that you don't know, but I'm just sharing. Already told you. Learn to love yourself. Love is a thing that you got to have a receptacle to receive. If you have no receptacle, meaning if you don't care for yourself, you can't care for someone else. So that's 1. 2, make time your friend. There's supposed to be a comma after time. Make time your friend. Take time to talk. Okay? Use the time to talk to each other. Don't guess. Ask her. Right, ladies? Don't guess what she wants. Ask her. Love her children. Let me pause for 2 minutes. Remember I told you earlier, ladies, the greatest way to show a man love is to respect him, show him some respect. Gentlemen, one of the best ways you can show your wife that you love her is to love her children. Some of you are going, duh. Let me explain what I mean. Treat her kids, they're your kids too, but we're talking about her now. Treat her kids with dignity and respect. Don't fight with them. You're the adult. Don't push them away. You are the parent. Don't kick them out of the house. You gave them the home. Are you following me? I know when they become teenagers, they become a pill. Let me tell you what I did, and I hope my daughter's not watching this. I have 2 kids, okay? A daughter and a son. My son is easy. He gets scared easily. You raise your voice, and he's in line. My daughter's favorite phrase as a teenager, make me. So, I decided to kill her with love. I drove this girl crazy. I don't care what happened. We had to talk about it. Dad, I don't want to talk right now. Talk to the hand. The face don't understand. Really? So, whose food do you eat? Mine. Who pays the rent? Me. Who pays the lights? Me. Who loves you? Me. We got to talk. I'm going to my room. I follow her around. I give her no rest. But you see, I'm doing it in a very light manner. Why? I'm the adult. I gotta find a way to get through to my kid. I mean, once in a while, you yell and scream, but it's not the modus operandi. You don't do it all the time. You can slip. But you gotta find a way to talk to your kid. That's how you love them. And when you do that, the wife knows, hey, my husband is weak. My husband has his issue, but he loves my kid. Folks, there are some men who really don't like their children. That is not showing love to your wife. I can go on, but I got to go on. Guys, get off your island. Women, you may not understand that, but guys, no. We have an island where we check out. I am a master at checking out. I get in my box, leave me alone. Once in a while, guys, get off your island and be seen as part of the family, as part of the home. Yeah, you have your man cave. You can go there sometime, but not all the time. Now, ladies, this is for you. How to love a man. The guys are going, finally. Feed him. Ladies, do not underestimate the power of food to get what you want from your man. Never tell to your man we need to talk if he's hungry. When you want to have that conversation with your man, cook his best meal, feed him. When he's full, then you can say, honey, did you enjoy the meal? Yeah. Can we talk? He's more liable to say yes and be open with a full belly than with an empty one. Feed him. You think I'm kidding? Talk to the guys. They'll agree. Feed your man. Feed him at least once a day. It needs to be your food to him. I don't care if you buy it, whatever you do. Honey, this is for you from me. This sounds so simplistic. Ladies, it works. Feed your man. And for those of you who are adults who understand me, feed your man. We already talked about that. Respect him. How do you respect a man? Respect a man doesn't mean you agree with everything he says. Even when you disagree, you say, honey, say it. I respect you. I respect your leadership in this home, but I got to disagree with you. Don't minimize him. Never tell a man he's not a man. You just killed him. Or you're not a man. Never say that. That's a killer. That's a weapon. That's a gunshot. Never. And never go to a place where he feels like when you look at him, he's not a man. That's a killer. The Y syndrome rise up, and it's bad news. Don't tell him what to do. Ask him, honey, would you like to take out the garbage now? Notice my words. I didn't say, would you take out the garbage? I said now, because when you tell a man take out the garbage, he say yes. He may take it out in a month. He did say yes, though. We need specific direction. Be specific. Honey, will you please take out the garbage now? Don't say, hey, bonehead, the garbage is smelling. What's up? Take it out. Nothing's going to happen. We don't like to be told what to do. Love his friends. I know. Some of them are knuckleheads. Some of them have no sense. And you wonder, where did he pick up this guy? It's his friend. If you love his friend, to him, that Y chromosome says, oh, she loves me. Oh. You know that mental health issue that I talked about earlier? That's us. Love our friends. I mean, you know, sometimes you may have to tell them, honey, I would love it if you spend a little bit more time with me. Leave the friends out of it. Don't tell me you spend all this time with your friend. No. Make it about you. I'd like more time with me because I miss you. You have a way you talk to me. Find something good about him. We love to have our ego brushed. I'm telling you, man, I'm a man talking to you. Respect his island. that place that he called his own, don't clean it up. Leave it alone. Guys, you know what I'm saying, right? That's our space. Don't go there. Leave it alone. Don't clean it up. Don't tell us to clean it up. Don't fuss about it. It's our space. It's our island. Leave it alone. Gosh, I'm 3 minutes out of time. Let me conclude quickly. How to love your children. Here we go. Love your kids as an individual. Every kid is different. My daughter and I, we communicate every day because I know she needs that. My son does not need that. My son, once a week, once every other week, we're good. Because I know if a week goes by, I don't communicate with my daughter, she worries, is daddy still alive? That's where she goes. I know her. My son, dad is doing his thing somewhere. So when I call him a dad, where in the world are you? Which country are you in? He's cool. My daughter, every day. Hey, sweetie, how you doing? Your dad is still alive. We spoke on FaceTime this morning. We speak on FaceTime every Saturday morning, sometimes twice for the week. My son, he doesn't care. Love your kids individually. Number 2, make time your friend. Spend time with your kids. One last thing about kids. Teach them to have a conversation with you as young as possible. Teach your kids to talk to you. Some of us wait until they are teenagers to have conversations. By then, it's too late. Then you're forcing them. They're saying to you, tuck to the hand, the face don't understand, like my daughter told me. Okay? Talk to them early. Teach them to have conversation. Talk back. It becomes a habit. Don't tell them, show them. Every day you're acting, they're learning from you. What you say is blah, 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 blah. What you do is, invite their friends over. If somebody were to ask me my biggest secret to child management, that I'm a pretty decent father, my home when my kids were teenagers was party central. Every party happened at my house. You know why, right? I know what's going on. I kid you not. Let's go first. My daughter graduated from Loma Linda Academy. I was the commencement speaker. You know why? They all knew me. Years later, I was in North Carolina working for the state. My son went to a private school, a ritzy private school. Guess who was the commencement speaker there? Me. Why? All his jockey friends, my son played basketball, varsity basketball. All his friends knew me. When they had to decide for commencement speaker, Mr. Audain, because they're all at my house. It was party central. I had 2 rules. No alcohol in my home, and only your mom and I can have sex in the house. That was the only rules. There was no time limit to the parties because it's my house. You can party all night. It's my home. You can come in any time. In my home, the door was not locked. We live in a decent neighborhood. The doors were never locked. Their friends come in and out without knocking. They knew that. When you come in. If they are in the neighborhood, you're hungry, come in for a meal. My home was a revolving door all the time. So my kids never had the problem of, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I borrow the car? Bring them here. Make your home party central. Help them create their island. And in conclusion, I'm really concluding now. Family strong means shared time together, shared traditions together, shared values together. God blessed and prospered Jacob in spite of the fact that he was deeply flawed. He will do the same to you, men. If God could use Jacob, he could use me, he can use you. 2, God's work has always been done by imperfect individuals. Be available. And lastly, your earthly family is training for eternal life. Do you realize that who you are today is who you will be in heaven, except perfect? So the habits you're forming now, they're habits for eternity. Love your family the way you love yourself. Amen.